Kansas City Chiefs are on a bye week this week, so we're going to take a little bit of a different look at how this is going so far this season for this Chiefs team, and we're going to take a look around the NFL and around the AFC here in just a moment on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Hey, Chiefs Kingdom, welcome back for another episode of Locked On Chiefs, your daily podcast covering the Kansas City Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for always making Locked On Chiefs your first listen of the day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well. I am Chris Clark. You can find me on X at Chris Clark NFL. You can also find me over at KC Chiefs Corner. Going to be talking a little bit more about third downs this week, and probably going to get into a little bit else since they are on a bye week this week. There's lots to talk about going on in the NFL today. Crossover Thursday is presented to you by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Be sure to go check out the new Locked On NFL. It is being hosted twice a day now. You have a Locked On NFL in the morning, and you have a Locked On NFL in the evening. Be sure to go check that out over on Locked On NFL. And there are so many things to talk about with this NFL team, with the Chiefs, how they're playing in the NFL. So far, 5-0 for the season. And we will get to all of that. But are there some moves that they could possibly make? We're going to get to that a little bit later in the show. How can we help the offense? How can the Chiefs help their offense? As it has been a slow point this season for right now, and it has been a slow point pretty much the entire season, and it has stalled out in the red zone. That has been a big problem. And then let's take a look at the AFC. Let's take a look at the rest of the AFC, how it is shaping out right now. And I do want to give a quick shout out to our insiders, our locos over on the text line. You can join us over there at 816-357-8781. All right. So when we start looking at the NFL and around the NFL right now, Kansas City is sitting at 5-0. They are the only AFC team in the NFL to be 5-0. So they definitely have a lead in the conference that is going to be huge come December and January when you're talking about playoff seeding and how that's going to work out. At this point, their next game is against San Francisco. It's going to be a week from this coming Sunday, so they have a little bit of time before they're going to play again. San Francisco actually plays on Thursday Night Football against the Seattle Seahawks, so they'll have a mini bye before they play against Kansas City the next Sunday. So something to watch there. And San Francisco has a couple of players out. We'll see how they end up going and looking against the Seattle Seahawks. Be sure to check that out. When you look around the NFL, you have Buffalo that is in first place in the AFC East. And you're looking at a team that has looked really like a team that's maybe had a chance to not necessarily go undefeated, but to be very good this season and to lose very few games. And the past couple of weeks, it is really dropped. After starting the season 3-0, they are now 3-2. They have a 2-game skid. They lost to the Baltimore Ravens in a game that really wasn't close. And then they lost to the Houston Texans in a game that they probably should have at least had a chance to win. But their bonehead coach really made some really questionable calls late in the game. You go back and watch the end of that Buffalo game, and Buffalo gets the ball back, I believe, around their 3 or 5 yard line, somewhere in there. And they inexplicably throw the ball out of their own end zone 3 straight times with Houston having 3 timeouts left. They didn't run the ball at all. They tried to take shots. There was only like 20 seconds left, and they were trying to get downfield and get into scoring position to be able to try to win it. At that point, you're basically giving Houston the game because they didn't get any completions, and they ended up having to punt the ball away. Houston got the ball back and was able to run one play, take a timeout, get in field goal range, and kicked a 59-yard field goal to win. That put Buffalo at 3-2. They're in a division right now that is going to be a little bit tougher, maybe going to be a little bit tougher even still. The Jets just released their coach in Robert Saleh, something to watch there, see how they end up taking on after their head coach has been let go. But the interesting thing about the Jets right now is they're trying to trade for Diontae Adams, or at least they want to trade for Diontae Adams. And if they get that done, that's going to help their offense. Is it going to be enough to make them a contender and have them get a chance to go to the Super Bowl? I'm not sure. With the way that team has looked so far this season, it doesn't really look very pretty for the New York Jets at this time. They are currently 2-3, and they play the Buffalo Bills, I believe, on Monday Night Football. So you're sitting there looking at a situation where they have a chance to take on the team that is leading their division on Monday Night Football, and maybe the Jets could be in first place at the AFC East headed into Week 7. That's going to be something to watch on Monday. When you start looking at the AFC North, it is completely upside down from where I would have expected it to be. You're looking at teams like the Bengals, who are 1-4, who I thought were going to be probably at least 3-2 at this point, if not 4-1. Joe Burrow looked very bad week 1, didn't look much better week 2, although he was better at week 2. But he has been on a tear the past couple of weeks, but it doesn't seem to matter. The Bengals still can't win. Their defense is not able to stop anybody right now, and it has cost them games. They had a situation where you go back and talk about, the Buffalo coach having a implosion at the end of his game. Cincinnati's coach didn't do much better. Zach Taylor got the ball back. Lamar fumbled, lost the ball. They got the ball back on like their 38-yard line, and they ran the ball 3 times. They didn't even give Joe Burrow a chance to drop back, who had played a fantastic game against the Ravens, and they ended up dropping the snap of the field goal, and he ended up missing it. The Ravens ended up going down and winning the game right after that. So Ravens are in the lead in the AFC North. They are right ahead of Pittsburgh right now. Pittsburgh's also 3-2. Both the Ravens and Pittsburgh are 3-2. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Justin Fields is possibly not going to be the starter there much longer in Pittsburgh, but he got them started off at 3-0, and now they're 3-2. It'll be curious to see if they make a move coming up this coming week. Then you get down to the AFC South. The AFC South has the Houston Texans. They are 4-1. The one loss that they have, though, is against the Minnesota Vikings, who are also 5-0, the only other 5-0 team in the NFL. That is going to definitely be something to watch over the course of the season. Houston also just had a huge injury pop up with Nico Collins heading to IR with a hamstring injury. He is not going to be available for at least the next 4 weeks. That is going to be a big loss for their offense. If you go back and watch any of the Buffalo game versus Houston, Houston's offense completely changed once Nico Collins went out. If that's going to continue and they're going to struggle to move the ball, that could be an issue for them. And there are a couple of teams in their division. Well, the Indianapolis Colts are 2-3 right now. Tennessee Titans are 1-4. Jacksonville Jaguars are 1-4. Jacksonville is a team that I think could make a run, especially late in the season. But right now, it is all Houston in the AFC South. Then you look at the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC West. Obviously, we know they're the number 1 team in the AFC West. They're the number 1 team in the conference currently. The Broncos are now 3-2 with a rookie starter. So that's going to be something to watch over the next couple of weeks. Can Knicks continue to play well? Their defense is fantastic. Something to watch there. But the real story in the AFC West right now is that the Las Vegas Raiders are now benching Gardner Minshew. Aiden O'Connell will be their starter at quarterback. How is that going to play out? Is that going to help them at all? Devontae Adams is not going to play again this week. He is still out with a hamstring injury. A lot of people are speculating whether or not that's really truly him having a hamstring injury or not. Several people have said it is, but there's a question of whether or not he's just going to be sitting out until they trade him, because it doesn't sound like they want him anymore in Vegas, which is really surprising. The Chargers were on a bye. They're still 2-2. We'll see what they're able to do. They should be a lot healthier coming off their bye week. When we get back, we're going to take a look at what has struggled with the offense, how they've struggled in the red zone, and maybe some things that could help them out going forward. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Every time I have a pre-alcohol before I drink, I notice the difference the next day. Even after a night out, I can confidently plan on getting up the next day and doing whatever I have on my schedule without a worry. Here's how to use it. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedonnfl and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout for 15% off. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Whether or not you're looking for Royals tickets, getting ready to host the New York Yankees on Thursday in another must-win game for the Royals, or you're looking for the time that the Chiefs play the next game at Arrowhead, you can find your tickets on Game Time. With Game Time Picks, you can curate and make it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Anything that you're wanting to get tickets for, you can get them at Game Time. All in pricing, you have to toggle this feature on so it shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So you need to make sure you toggle that on if you're looking for the all-in pricing. Seat views, you can get panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you up to 110% of the difference. And with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, so what has plagued this team so far this season? It has been the turnovers. There have been a ton of them, and they have been early in games. This is one of the things that Kansas City avoided most of the season last year. If you go back and watch most of last year's most of last year's games, Kansas City was very good in their first 15 plays. They were scoring on multiple games in a row on their first 15 plays, maybe even multiple drives, because they were that good. This year, that is down, and it is down in a big way. Kansas City has only scored twice on its first 15 plays in their first two drives. Touchdowns anyway. They did have a field goal against the Cincinnati Bengals, but they have a touchdown against the Baltimore Ravens and a touchdown against the New Orleans Saints, in which they got an interception that led them to their first touchdown against the Saints. It has been a story of just turning the ball over way too many times. Kansas City right now is currently losing the first quarter margin, and they are losing the second quarter margin. The biggest thing that has kept Kansas City's offense from being successful is they continuously turn the ball over early on. Last year, if you go back and watch, most of the games that they were able to be successful in early on in the season and really throughout the rest of the year as well, they scored early on. They scored touchdowns on their first drive. They've scored points on their first drive. They've only scored 2 touchdowns so far in the first 5 games this year. That is a big change from what it has been in the past. The bigger problem that they're running into is they're also turning the ball over on those first drives. So far this season, they have an interception against Baltimore, Cincy, Atlanta, and Los Angeles, all in the first half. They've also fumbled the ball twice, once to Cincy and once to Los Angeles, also in the first half. They have put themselves in horrible situations this entire season, and it has almost cost them games. They're very lucky to be sitting at 5-0. One of the reasons they are is because Patrick Mahomes is able to orchestrate drives from behind and put them in favorable situations, even though they are putting themselves in a bad situation. So far this season, they are currently losing the first quarter 27-17 in those 5 games. They're winning the second quarter by 42-30. So what is going on so far this season is they are losing in the first quarter, and in those combined 5 games, they've scored enough points to offset that loss because they're only down 10, and they end up getting 2 more points in the second quarter than they lose in the first. So they're actually up 2 usually at halftime. That is a very, very slim margin. That is also kind of skewed a little bit from a game that they scored a lot of points against New Orleans compared to what they've scored in most of the games so far this season. So that is going to be something to watch as well. They have struggled. Once you lost Rashee Rice in the Chargers game, they struggled to move the ball a little bit against the Chargers. They really struggled in the second half on offense. And then you watch how they played against New Orleans. They got down they were able to move the ball in between the 20s. That's all. That's been something they've been able to do almost consistently most of the season. But once they got inside the 20-yard line against the New Orleans Saints, They struggled to put points on the board in the red zone. They kicked 4 field goals and missed another one when they got close to scoring. They had a bunch of scoring opportunities, but they were only able to get 4 field goals and 2 touchdowns out of those opportunities. That's something that they have to get figured out. They have to be more efficient. And I think that there are some things that they can do to really attack that and to make it a little bit better. One of the things, and I really like seeing this in this last game against the Saints, they need to use more of their 13 and 14 personnel. They have different looks that they can give you. Uh, I talked about this a little bit after the game, but seeing them go to 14 personnel and have all 4 tight ends, or sorry, 3 of their tight ends split out as wide receivers and a 4th tight end in line, that is a personnel grouping that not many teams in the NFL are going to be able to pull off. They don't have enough athletic tight ends to be able to pull that off. And all 3 of the guys that they had split out can run routes almost as good as wide receivers to an extent in Travis Kelce and definitely Jody Fortson. Noah Gray's a little bit less than in that case, but Jody Fortson is going to be a big addition to this lineup. And I do think that that's going to be something that they're going to have to lean on, as they're not going to get Rice back this year. That's going to be something that where he's going to be out the rest of the season, and you're not going to get Hollywood Brown back until likely the playoffs. Is it possible they make a move? We're going to talk about that here in a little bit in just another segment. But right now, this offense is struggling because they keep turning the ball over, and they keep turning the ball over early. So far this season, like I said, they have INTs in the first 4 games in the first half. You cannot win that way, and they have 2 additional fumbles also in the first half. That is going to make it very hard to continuously win. And one of the things that they have been struggling with is they are down in the turnover differential. That is something that I talked about going into the Saints game is a big key. They needed to get to a point where they were not down in the turnover differential anymore, and they're still struggling with that just a little bit. The other thing that you look at when they allow all these turnovers is they're allowing points off the turnovers. So against Baltimore, they had that 1 INT in the first quarter, in the first half, and it cost them 3 points. Against Cincinnati, they gave up 10 points off the 2 turnovers that they had. Against Atlanta, it's the only time that they have turned the ball over and it not cost them in the first half. Against Los Angeles, we all remember they turned the ball over on a fumble. Los Angeles went down and scored a touchdown. Then they turned the ball over with an interception, and Los Angeles went down and scored a field goal. So they scored 10 more points in that game. That is really costing this team right now. If you look at that situation, they have allowed 23 of their points. 23 of their 57 points have come off turnovers in the first half. That is killing this team. That is killing their consistency. That's killing their ability to score points, one. But more importantly, it's also putting their defense in a precarious situation because they have to defend short fields. This defense is great, and they're getting better as the year goes on. They're very good against the run. That is not something that I expected to be saying this early in the season for this Chiefs defense, but that's definitely going to be something that they're going to have to hang their hat on as this season wears on. The other thing, Mahomes, we know, has 6 turnovers, has 6 interceptions so far in 5 games. He also had an interception in the second half against Cincinnati and another interception in the second half against New Orleans, although the one that he had in New Orleans, I have to put that on Juju. I know Ryan probably disagrees with me on that one, but that hit Juju in the hands. Then the guy hit him. To me, that's a catch you have to make as a wide receiver. Was it behind him a little bit? Yeah, maybe 6 inches behind where you probably want the ball, maybe as much as 9 inches to a foot. But you still have to catch that. It hits you basically in your face. You got both hands on the ball. You have to catch that ball, or at least make sure you don't pop it up, especially in the end zone and the red zone, because that is going to make it very easy to intercept at that point because there are so many bodies around the ball at that time. When we get back, we're going to talk about some moves they could possibly make because they are going to be very thin at wide receiver for the rest of the season, and there are some things that they could possibly do to make it a little bit easier on themselves when we get back. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Whether you want to go bet on the Seahawks and the 49ers game that's going to kick off on Thursday night, or you want to go make a bet on the Royals and the Yankees, who will also be going at it on Thursday night. Lots of different things you can look at on FanDuel. Right now, it looks like the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers have an over and under of 49.5 points. If that's a bet you want to make, go check it out at FanDuel. That is fanduel.com. Go check it out, and you can get up to $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at fanduel.com. This is the fun part of the show. Let's go ahead and dive in. There are three different areas or three different players that I want to take a look at. This is where I think Kansas City could make some hay. I do think that they're going to have to look at the wide receiver position. Some people have asked, is it possible they can go make an acquisition at left tackle? Yeah, they could go sign somebody. Donovan Smith is still out there as a free agent. I don't see them doing that. It would be nice if they could get better play from the guys that they have at left tackle. But I don't think that Donovan Smith is going to be the answer. I don't think that even if they were able to go get him and put him in there, I don't think that that's a good situation for one, Donovan Smith, two, for Patrick Mahomes, and really three for the Chiefs in general, because I don't think Donovan Smith would be ready to play their next game against San Francisco, who's going to be going against Nick Bosa. Don't think you want him out there for that. But you also don't want to be in a situation where Patrick Mahomes is dealing with another guy that he's got to get used to having his back and on the left side. So to me, I don't think that that's a move that makes a lot of sense. Three moves that possibly people have been asking about. I don't think there's any possible way that they trade for Devontae Adams. One, it's a division rival. I don't think the Raiders are going to be wanting to make a move to help Kansas City. The only way Kansas City could afford it is if the Raiders were willing to eat some cap space, which it doesn't sound like they want to do. So I don't think that that's going to be a move that they can make. There are three guys that potentially could make sense for Kansas City. Number one, and the easiest one to talk about, is Amari Cooper. I do think that this is a move that would make a lot of sense. Cleveland is currently 1-4. There is talk that it's possible that if they have another bad game, maybe they're going to bench Deshaun Watson. If they go that direction, there's really no reason to have Amari Cooper on the team. You're going to be 1-5, chasing in a division that has Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore already in it. That would be a very big ask for Cleveland to try to come back from. So to me, you look at this situation, and Amari Cooper's base salary for the year, because they already restructured him, is only $1.2 million. That's something Kansas City could take on, and they could definitely afford to take on that type of salary. There are some questions with Cooper. He has had some problems with drops so far this season, and that's going to be something that needs to be looked at a little bit and considered. But to me, he is a guy that can still be a very high number 2 wide receiver, and maybe even a number 1 at towards the end of the season, and that gives them a second weapon to throw in there with a Hollywood Brown once the playoffs comes around. And I do think Brown will be back for the playoffs. So to me, Cooper is the guy that makes the most sense. If you want another name, and I'm going to go with another one that makes a little bit more sense than the last one I'll throw out there, it is DeAndre Hopkins. Now, Hopkins is number 2 on my list because of this. Tennessee has the money to be able to eat his cap space and make a move if they want to make a move and trade him. That is going to play a very large part in whether or not a move can get done with DeAndre Hopkins. Currently, he has a salary of $8.3 million, basically, with a roster bonus of $1.02 million, which comes out to a little bit less than $850,000 a game on an 18 game schedule. So you're looking at a situation where they're going to have to eat some of the salary in order to be able to trade him to Kansas City, because Kansas City cannot take that on. Now, what they could do is they could pay him his salary. They could restructure it, pay him his salary, and basically take the cap hit for the entire salary amount. And maybe Kansas City would be able to swap them and be willing to swap them a larger pick than they would get otherwise, because Kansas City doesn't have the money to be able to take on an extra $6 million or $5.5 million in cap space for DeAndre Hopkins. I wish they did, but they don't. And that is going to be a big problem when you're looking into how this is going to fit in with this team and this roster. How does it fit in the cap? And can it make sense, trading away a draft pick? It can, if you can get the cap space worked out. Tennessee can get that done. Cleveland doesn't have to. So I think that's the one that makes the most sense. The one that a lot of people are also talking about is Diontae Johnson. Here's the problem with Diontae Johnson. Diontae Johnson has a base salary of $7 million. Now, Kansas City doesn't have the money to be able to take on, even $3 million of that. They barely have $4.5 million in cap space right now. And part of the reason that not even $4.1 million in cap space right now. And they need money to be able to move around and do different things this season. Kansas City just does not have the cap space to deal with another $4 or $5 million salary. And it wouldn't be that big of a deal, except Carolina has only $182,000 in cap space for the entire season left. That is less. They have the least amount of cap space in the entire NFL. You were looking at a team that is struggling to win, and they do not have any cap space. That is a huge issue in Carolina and something that they're going to have to figure out. But the problem is you can't restructure his contract. They don't have the money to be able to restructure his contract. They would have to restructure multiple different players to be able to open up enough cap space to be able to trade Diontae Johnson. And right now, they don't have a ton of guys that they could go and trade a lot of money for or go in and restructure. Taylor Moton is maybe the biggest one. He has a $6 million salary, and I guess you could probably make that work. You could probably restructure and get a couple million out of that. But that's really the problem that you're going to run into when you start looking at Carolina is when you look at their base salary players, they don't really have guys that have a ton of money coming on the base salary. They are already pretty much at their max, and that is a huge issue. Austin Corbett's another guy. Actually, looking at the Carolina roster right now, Diontae Johnson has the largest gross salary, the largest base salary in the entire organization. That's a big problem. So, how you're going to make cap space if you're Carolina to be able to make that kind of move, I don't see how you're going to be able to do it. Maybe you do something and he's willing to just restructure and do a restructure deal with Kansas City when he comes over. That's probably the only way you're going to be able to get something like that done with a guy like Diontae Johnson, because the reality is Carolina doesn't have the money to be able to spread it around and help Kansas City, and Kansas City doesn't have the money to be able to take on that type of deal. So Kansas City could. The other thing that Kansas City could do, and this could make a move with Diontae Johnson and maybe even DeAndre Hopkins work, where Kansas City didn't need the other team to do anything. They could restructure a guy like Juwan Taylor. Juwan Taylor could give them $7-8 million to be able to apply to this salary cap year. I don't think that they want to go that direction, but it is something they could do to be able to create cap space. So that's going to be something to watch as well. That's going to be it for me today. Thank you all for listening. Let me know in the comments who you want the Chiefs to go after. If there's another player you want me to take a look at, and maybe I can get some more salary cap information for you all. But who would you like to see the Chiefs go after? Thank you all for making Locked On Chiefs your first listen for the day. Now, make your second listen. Go find the new Locked On NFL now with 2 shows every day. First, the Madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL Espresso. And then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. That's going to be it for me today. Thank you all for listening. Ryan and I will be back tomorrow to talk more Chiefs on their bye week and get you ready for the games that are going to be coming up against San Francisco and the future games as well as we look into the future for this Chiefs team. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you tomorrow.